He landed at Heathrow with one suitcase, one hoodie, and one very confident assumption: cool, I'll explore the UK in like 2 days. In his head, the United Kingdom was basically London, and then maybe a couple of cute little villages you drive through on the way to a castle. That was it. Small country. Easy. Walkable. After all, how big could a place be when Americans casually drive for 6 hours and still haven't left their own state? That confidence lasted exactly 37 minutes. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. The first crack appeared on the train platform. He asked someone very casually, "Hey, how far is Manchester from here?" The guy blinked, looked at him, then said, like 2 hours. 2 hours by train. Not traffic, not delays, just distance. That was confusing, but fine. Countries can be a little spread out. Still, in his mind, everything probably still revolved around London. London was the UK. Everything else was just DLC content. Then the announcements started. Multiple accents. Some words sounded familiar. Others sounded like English had been remixed. He caught "mind the gap" perfectly. But then someone said something that sounded like, "Y'all right, love? Cheers to see ya now." He froze. Was that English? Was that directed at him? Was he supposed to respond? This was the moment he realized something important. The UK wasn't one place, it was many places pretending to be one country. Day one in London felt exactly how he expected. Big city, busy, historic buildings right next to modern glass towers, red buses, crowds everywhere. He thought, "Yep, this is it. I've basically seen the UK now." "Sure," he said confidently. "How far?" "Oh, just a short train ride." That phrase, "short train ride," would betray him repeatedly. An hour later, he stepped out into a place that looked nothing like London. Smaller streets, older buildings, quiet pubs, people who somehow walked slower but still got places faster, and everyone had a different accent again. That's when the geography illusion completely collapsed. He opened Google Maps, zoomed out, and out again. England alone was bigger than he imagined. Then he noticed Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, islands he'd never heard of, entire cities he couldn't pronounce. Wait, why were there mountains? Why was there countryside everywhere? Why did every random place seem to have a 1,000-year-old history and zero explanation? In America, old buildings get plaques. In the UK, they're just there. Casual, like, "Oh yeah, that's from the 1200s. Anyway, Tesco's over there." Then came the road trip mistake. He thought, "I'll just drive across the UK." Across. As if it were a straight line. What he didn't expect was that every 20 minutes, the landscape changed. Cities turned into fields. Hills turned into cliffs. Suddenly there were sheep, then more sheep, then only sheep. No billboards, no massive highways, just narrow roads that looked like they were designed for horses, not cars. And then the signs started changing. Different spellings, different languages entirely. Wait, was that Welsh? Why does that town name have 12 consonants and no mercy? At this point, the idea that the UK was basically London felt embarrassing. Then came Scotland. He expected cold London with better views. What he got was dramatic landscapes, quiet power, and people who could switch accents like a superpower. 1 minute, perfectly clear English. Next minute, absolutely not. Cities like Edinburgh felt ancient and cinematic. Glasgow felt modern, loud, alive, and nothing like the stereotypes he'd absorbed from movies. And somehow, it was still the same country. Back in the US, crossing into another state often feels like crossing into another Starbucks. Here, crossing a border meant different history, different identity, different pride. Then someone casually said, "You should see Wales." Wales, in his head, Wales was just there. A footnote, something you scroll past. Until he saw the mountains, the coastline, the castles, the language that looked like a keyboard malfunction but sounded poetic when spoken. People didn't rush. Time moved differently. And again, different accent. By now, the shock wasn't confusion anymore. It was respect. The UK wasn't small. It was dense. Every mile was layered with history, culture, and personality. Every town had a story. Every region had an opinion about the others. And London? London wasn't the UK. London was just one world inside many. The biggest shock of all came when he realized how wrong his mindset had been. He'd arrived thinking in American scale, thinking size equals importance, thinking distance equals relevance. But the UK doesn't stretch wide, it stacks deep. Centuries of history, compressed into short distances. Multiple identities sharing borders. Traditions surviving next to modern life without explanation. By the time he was heading home, one thought kept repeating, I didn't even see half of it. What he thought would be a quick visit turned into a humbling lesson, not about geography, but about assumptions. And that's the thing no one tells Americans before they arrive. The UK isn't small. It just doesn't need to shout about its size. And just when he thought the surprises were over, the UK had one last trick. He realized something unsettling. The more he traveled, the less confident he became. Every place rewrote what he thought he knew. Every conversation challenged his expectations. Even simple questions stopped having simple answers. Where are you from? Well, which part? Is this England? Yes, but not that England. He noticed locals correcting him gently. Not offended, just amused. Like they'd heard this before. Like Americans always arrived thinking the UK was small, and always left knowing better. And the strangest part? Despite everything, the accents, the borders, the differences, it all somehow worked. Not perfectly, not quietly, but honestly, the UK wasn't one town. It was a collection of worlds pretending to be close enough to touch. And that shock? That moment of realization? That's what stays with you long after the flight home. Just when he thought he'd finally figured out the UK, it surprised him again. Not with size this time, but with how seriously people took where they were from. Back home, saying you're from New York or Texas already tells most of the story. Here, saying, I'm from the UK, told absolutely nothing. People didn't just ask what country, they asked what city, then what area, then which side of that area. And every answer came with opinions. Say London, and someone rolls their eyes. Say Manchester, and someone brings up football. Say Birmingham, and someone corrects your pronunciation immediately. Say Scotland, and suddenly the conversation becomes very specific. He realized the UK wasn't united by sameness, it was united by differences everyone understood without explaining. Then came public transport. In his head, small country meant simple transport, one train line, easy routes. Instead, he found himself staring at maps that looked like abstract art, lines crossing lines, stations with the same name, in different places. He learned very quickly that saying, it's just a short ride, meant nothing. It could be 10 minutes, it could be 2 hours. It could involve 3 trains, a bus, and a polite apology from the driver. And yet, it worked. Quietly, efficiently, without drama. Another shock, how walkable everything felt. Back home, walking is exercise. Here, walking was life. People walked to the store, walked to the pub, walked in the rain like it wasn't happening. And the pubs, that was another misunderstanding. He expected bars. What he found were living rooms for entire neighborhoods, kids outside, history on the walls, strangers talking like old friends. Some pubs were older than his country, and no one made a big deal about it. That casual relationship with history messed with him the most. Castles weren't destinations, they were background scenery. Roman walls weren't attractions, they were just there. In the US, history is preserved behind glass. In the UK, history is leaned against, walked past, and occasionally used as a shortcut. Then there was the weather myth. He'd heard the jokes. Constant rain, gray skies, misery. But what shocked him wasn't the rain. It was how little anyone cared. Rain didn't cancel plans. Rain didn't slow people down. Rain was just part of the day. Umbrellas were optional. Complaining was mandatory, but brief. And somehow, between the clouds, the countryside looked unreal. Green in a way he wasn't prepared for. Endless. Soft. Alive. He realized something else too. The UK didn't try to impress him. No big speeches. No world's biggest anything. No constant reminders of greatness. It didn't need to prove itself. That confidence, quiet, old, unbothered, was the biggest shock of all. By the end of the trip, the original idea that the UK was just a small town around London felt almost funny. Not because it was ignorant, but because it was familiar. He wasn't the first American to think it. And he wouldn't be the last. But everyone who arrives thinking that leaves with the same realization. You don't measure the UK in miles, you measure it in layers. Layers of culture, layers of history, layers of identity packed so tightly together that distance stops meaning what you think it does. And maybe that's the real shock.